I've got to catch a plane at 1 o'clock, so I'm gonna have to, if I don't get arrested, I'm going to have to jump down from here and literally fly. But I want to thank you all for coming out on a cold Saturday morning. I do appreciate that. You know, were it not for the fact that there isn't a single politician seems willing to deal with the issue of bonuses, we could all be in our beds nice and warm, tucked up. You're going to get one over there, son?
Oh no, it's coming in. I've got one eye
behind you.
there.
Good. Let's not do that. So, I want you to cast your minds back to about a month ago, on the 13th of January, the morning we woke up to see in our newspapers the true horror of what had happened to the people of Haiti. But for those of you with strong stomachs who are able to wade through that, some heartbreaking reports, there was another story, in fact a local story, that came, a national story about an incident not very far from here, on the Union Canal in Winchbury, is it? Winchbury, just across the other side of the airport. It's the famous tale of what the newspaper that I read referred to as the two numpties, which I understand is a local dialect word. The two numpties who, in freezing weather, which we were having at the time in our early January cold snap, decided to drive a Peugeot 406 along the Union Canal in West Lothian. And apparently for the first couple of miles they were doing fine. They got up to about 30 miles an hour, and then somewhere around Winchburg they decided in their wisdom to pull a handbrake turn. They went through the ice, and fortunately for them, and they had a West Highland Terrier with them. Fortunately, as you do when you're driving on the canal in Scotland, they were able to escape. The canal wasn't that deep, and the 406 ended up with its nose on the bottom of the canal and its arse in the air. They were able to escape. And I thought about those when I the same day when I read the reports about Stephen Hester, the chairman of the Royal Bank of Scotland. On the 12th of January, while the two numpties were testing the ice just up the road there, he was giving evidence to the Select Committee, Treasury Select Committee of the House of Commons, and our elected representatives were asking him how he could pay an estimated 1.5 billion bonuses, and what grounds he had for paying these. And he said he was a prisoner of the market, he said, with a tear coming to his eye. And when he was actually pressed by a Scottish MP to explain if he had a strategy for explaining to the British taxpayers, who as taxpayers, we bailed out the Royal Bank of Scotland, how he was going to explain to the taxpayers that he was going to pay £1.5 billion in bonuses less than a year after the Royal Bank of Scotland recorded the largest corporate losses in British business history. And he kind of smiled and said, "I'm thinking of going on a long holiday." And there was something about that, something about his manner, something about his lack of shame that really, well, it's probably why I'm standing here this morning. It started all this business. Not just the sense of outrage that someone who is the highest paid public servant in the land could be so frivolous with our money, but also a dreadful sense of powerlessness, that there is no political party capable of winning power at the next election, which is probably only 12 weeks away, that is going to do anything about the excessive bonus culture at a nationally owned bank. So I spent a couple of days grumping around, walking my dog, thinking about this, expecting there to be outrage in the press, and there wasn't really any outrage in the press. And I was a bit stumped for what to do, but I'd recently received a demand to pay my taxes on 31st of January. And although it's not literally what happens, I just couldn't escape this idea that on 31st of January I would be writing out this cheque to Alistair Darling. And in the middle of February, Stephen Hester will be, having received the money from my cheque, will be paying it out to his executives in the form of these £1.5 billion worth of bonuses. So I decided, I hit upon an idea that perhaps I might not pay my taxes this year. But I also found out through the wonder of Google that when Alistair Darling bailed out Royal Bank of Scotland to the tune of £117 billion of public money, part of the deal was as a contractual agreement whereby he has the right to veto any bonuses above £25,000. That's a significant figure because not only does it include the bonuses at that level, include the high street staff and the clerical staff in local branches, but £25,000 also happens to be the average annual wage for the British worker. So it's a very significant figure. So when I found out that this veto existed, I thought, well, this is brilliant, because now I don't have to get my pitchfork and my flaming torch and storm the Winter Palace. Here is a tool with which to deal with this problem, a contractual agreement between the Royal Bank of Scotland and the government, which they must have accepted was fair. So I thought, well, perhaps if I wrote to Alistair Darling saying, I'm refusing to pay my taxes until you use this veto, then he might possibly say, that's fair, Bill. Now, why should I suddenly take interest in the Royal Bank of Scotland? Well, as we've all heard since Christmas, we're being softened up for the most swingeing public service cuts in a generation. We're all of us going to face difficult times ahead, whoever wins the election. And I just find it really difficult to consider these bankers, these publicly paid bankers, waltzing away with this money whilst the rest of us are having to face serious cuts in public services. And the whole notion of these bankers' bonuses is not really based in any rationale other than the bankers' idea of their own self-worth. Everybody I've argued with about this, even Lord Miners, who actually replied to Alistair Darling's letter, wrote back to me and said more or less, we had to bail out the banks, otherwise the high streets banks would have gone down. I accept that, I agree with that. I think it was good that we bailed out the banks. He also said, we've got to get our money back. I totally agree with that as well, of course we have. With profit if possible. What I didn't accept was what he said, we have to pay these bankers because if we don't, they'll go somewhere else. Now, there's something about this argument that really sticks in my craw. It's what we call the L'Oreal defence. We have to pay these people because they're worth it, or so they think they're worth it. And it comes everywhere. I mean, we've had arguments with bankers on the No Bonus website. You may have read something. The idea that, watching the news back, the idea that somehow there's nobody else capable of doing this kind of work, borrowing at less than 1% from the government and then lending it to people at 10%. My son could do that, he's not very good at maths. This idea that these are sort of like masters of the universe who kind of, are capable of doing these incredible high-risk things. The two numpties, when they were driving on the Union Canal out in West Lothian, while they were driving along on the canal, they thought, this is brilliant, we're driving on a canal. Anybody standing on the bank could see how it was going to end. They were driving a 1.5-ton car on a canal that was just frozen over a few days. Any fool could see how it would end. And it's the same with the bankers. We could all see how it would end. We could all see how their ridiculous risk-taking would end. And yet they carried on with their foot on the pedal and they pulled their handbrake turn and they smashed through the ice. And then the bankers did exactly the same and destroyed our economies. And they've left us in a very, very difficult position. Now,